I am Rosan B. Valenzuela, a grade 9 student from Santa Maria National High School. And today I will present our performance task in mathematics about the topics of variation. Now, when we hear the word variation, some of us might immediately think it is a complicated or purely mathematical term. But the truth is variation is something that we actually see and experience in our everyday life. It is simplified to describe the relationship between two quantities and how one depends on the other. For example, in cooking the more cup of rice, we put the more water. We need to add in traveling the far here. The place, the longer the time it will take to get there. Even in the studying, the more hour we spend reviewing, the better our change our understanding the lesson and getting good grades. There are simple and practical situations where variation happens naturally. But aside from cooking, traveling, or studying, there is one thing that most you can relate to more, something that is already part of our daily routine. That is the use of internet. Almost every day, students to use the internet for online class, for doing schoolwork project, for research, for entertainment like TikTok, YouTube, and gaming, and also for connecting with friends and family. Whenever we use the internet, we consume data, and sometimes we don't even notice how much data we are already using in just a few hours. For instance, scrolling through social media may feel like only short time, but when you check your remain data, half of it is already gone. That is why not for our performance task, I choose the real-life situation of internet data consumption. I believe this is something very relatable to all of us because we all rely on data of our daily activities. Understanding how data consumption works through the concept of variation will not only help us in mathematics but will also teach us how to be wiser in budgeting our money and managing our time.
So, presenting the real-life situation, tayo sa unang bahagi. Let's imagine this situation. A student subscribes to a data promo that costs 50 pesos for every gigabyte of data. The more gigabytes they use, the higher their expenses will be. Another example, watching online videos. The longer you watch, the more data is consumed. For example, if watching for 1 hour consumes 1 gigabyte, watching 2 hours will consume so on. Question: can you imagine how much data we consume in a day if we just keep scrolling on TikTok or YouTube for several hours? Explanation of the kind of variation. As gigabytes increase, the cost also increases. In mathematics, we say y varies directly as x. Here y is the cost and x is the number of gigabytes. Learning goal. In the second example, the relationship between the data consumed and the time spent watching also shows a direct variation. The longer the time spent in watching, the more data is consumed. This is also written as y varies directly as x, where y is the data consumed and x is the time spent watching. In both cases, we can see that two quantities move in the same direction. When one increases, the other also increases. Equation and problem solving. Let the cost C vary directly with the number of gigabytes. G equation, C is equal to kg. Example, if 50 pesos is the cost of 1 gigabyte, then K is equal to 50, so the equation becomes C is equal to 50G. If a student uses 6 gigabytes, C is equal to 50 times 6, C is equal to 300. Example, direction variation, data and time spent watching. Let the data consumed be vary directly with the time spent. The equation T is equal to KT. Another example, if one another watching consumer consumes 1 gigabyte of data, then K is equal to 1. So the equation becomes D is equal to 1T. And another example, if a student watch for hours, D is equal to 1 times 4, D is equal to 4 gigabytes. Another example, if one movie takes 2 hours and consumes 2 gigabytes, how many gigabytes will be consumed? The student watched 3 movies. Total time, 3 times 2 is equal to 6 hours. D is equal to 1 times 6 equal to 6 gigabytes. So 6 gigabytes will be consumed.
Conclusion. Conclusion variation is not just as a concept in mathematics. We can also see it in our everyday life. The cost of data show a direct variation. When gigabytes increase, the expenses also increase. The data consumed and the time spent watching also show direct variation. When time increases, more data is used. By understanding variation, we learn how to predict results and make better decisions. For example, if we know how many gigabytes are consumed per hour, we can already estimate the total consumption for a day or even for a week. This helps us budget our allowance wisely and avoid our overspending on load or promos. Aside for budgeting, this also teaches us discipline in using the internet. If we spend too much time on social media or watching videos, we don't only waste data but also lose time for studying, resting, or bonding with family. That's why studying variation is important. It is not just about number but about applying them in real life situations for better choices and decisions. So whenever we use internet data, let's remember the more time we spend, the more data we consume, and the more data we consume, the higher the expenses. That's why we need to be smart and responsible in using both our time and resources. As the saying goes, too much as anything is bad. That's why we need balance, not just in using the internet, but in also aspect of our life. And as an additional reminder, let us use the internet not only for entertainment, but more importantly for learning and self-improvement. That's end my presentation. Thank you very much and good day.